So Darryn, really, really lovely to have you in here with us today. Would
Thank
you
you.
like to just give us a bit of information as to who you are and why you work in this sector?
Thank you, Sarah. So who I am, I'm from a mining family. I was born in Africa. My dad worked with Caterpillar. So I drove my first bulldozer when I was 6. So it's been in my lifeblood. Dad was transferred to Melbourne when I was 8. And I lived just around the mining industry in Australia for as long as I can remember. So it has been part of my DNA. I worked with ICI Explosives and they moved me around the world, eventually into Wigan, into England, which most people laugh because it's not the place you'd expect mining to be or explosives. And I think that entered a journey into the British mining industry and the government, and I became the government's mining engineer in 2014. And looked after the UK's assets on the London Stock Exchange, like at Rio Tinto and BHP and Anglo American, etc., and helping support their investments and the way they mine. And then that led to an interest in critical minerals and what was mining's role in the energy transition, and could it be a force for good rather than the bad guy in the movie as it is often described. So that really occupied the last 10 years of my life. 2 years ago, that journey ended at COP26. Frankly, I wasn't able to get mining on the agenda, and 10 years in government's a long time, and not to have that success that I dreamed about. And I was very thankful for Worley to come along and say, look, why don't you continue a journey in the engineering of the energy transition, but working for us. So I look after Europe and Central Asia for the mining business for Worley, but I have more of a global remit along with some friends, some of which are from government, in the critical minerals supply chains, where we look at the battery active materials business globally. We are probably the most active in the Western world as a company in that space.
So a fantastic variety of different experiences. We'll gloss over the potential child labour of driving a dozer when you were 6 years old, although I think many 6-year-olds would be incredibly jealous of you for that particular opportunity. But let's just come back to the UK aspect, because I think most people, when you say mining in the UK, they think, oh, that's something that sort of stopped in the 1980s. But that's not the case, is it? The United Kingdom's actually got a massive role in the mining sector. Well,
if you look at the Bronze Age was the UK, right? Cornwall, Clondalkin and Wales, parts of Paris Mountain, a bit of Ireland, and that sort of was the genesis, if you like, of the UK's mining industry and metallurgy and processing, and someone mixed copper and someone put tin with it, and there was bronze. And that, the artifacts have been found as far east as Mongolia, so it was an incredible sort of start to the UK's mining interest. And that led to Copperopolis in Wales. Most people don't even know that exists. They think it's a funny name. We used to produce 70% of the world's copper metal in Wales. It's why the London Metal Exchange has a 3-month copper price, is to get ore from Chile into the UK to process. So all this has been lost. So the DNA of mining globally, most of it comes from the United Kingdom. And most people, and I say this affectionately as an Australian, who loves to beat up Britain in any shape or form, right? Particularly cricket, as we're doing at the moment. But there's this natural sort of ownership of the mining industry, if you like. I know that's existed in other places, but the formative invention and innovation has come from the United Kingdom. And that's where I really become passionate about the UK's role, because it continues to have that. But most people forget about the fact that it has most of the world's largest mining companies on the stock exchange. It has some of the best universities that will continue to be active in reducing the environmental footprint of mining. It continues to have pension funds and other investors who are driving the intervention and making mining better. So it's a world superpower in terms of mining, but that's probably just an anathema to most people.
And so with regards to that, has mining changed since we had Copperopolis, etc. like that? Has the mining industry changed at all, or are we still talking about the same processes, the same approaches, the same demands, I guess, of the sector?
I don't think it's changed fundamentally at all, really. I look at explosives in Alfred Nobel. I worked for ICI. Alfred set up the Rob Urite facility in Wigan in 1869. Fundamentally, the drill, blast, muck process, throw the waste on a tailings dam. We just got better at it, really. It became more efficient. What are the fundamental changes in the mining processes? None really of any significance. Have we significantly reduced our environmental impact? Nah, I don't think so. I think we've trebled the size of our tailings dams. Water use still is a massive issue. Dust, the way we talk to local communities, I think is only really fundamentally changed in the last 5 years. So no, I don't think it's changed.
Does it need to change?
I was privileged to work with presidents of Latin America, and one of them came to London and said, you know, the problem with mining, Darryn, is it's always the bad guy in the movie. And for me, who has always been involved in mining in that sort of that microcosm, that was quite disturbing, because I know mining people, you know, and most of them are good. They're good human beings. So I believe that mining can be a force for good. I really do. But something needs to fundamentally change in the way we organise ourselves and the way we communicate with people and the way we interact and exploit the environment really fundamentally has to change. So that's my perspective on it.
So how do we change mining from the bad guy in the movie to if not the hero, but at least one of the good characters?
I think we get rid of bad actors. Mm-hmm. We self-organise and we get rid of them. Mm-hmm. I don't think we tolerate them. There needs to be some form of investors getting together and just making sure they don't get the cash they need. I think that's a fundamental, get rid of the bottom percentile, which really, for one bad actor, it poisons the whole industry. And I think on that's the stick, I guess. On the carrot side, I think we focus on the good performers, the good players, and the ones that are taking a risk and creating new technologies which enable the mining industry to perform, but with a much more collaborative approach to local communities, enabling them to genuinely prosper, but also minimizing that impact on the environment, which has plagued us for generations, since biblical times, really.
So with regards to removing the bad actors, or at least rearranging the money, so where the money is spent, a number of people might suggest that the good actors are good, but they don't make as much money because it costs money to act and to mine in a responsible manner. Is that true, or is that a fairly naive perspective? And what does that mean from an investor's perspective?
You've got this cadre of the world's largest mining companies, typically, in fact, all of them are London listed, taking a more proactive role in changing the mining technology. But the issue is that it's not necessarily about the return. It's about what they're allowed to do. And the point that comes up all the time is when you invest in $4 billion in a typical greenfields mining project, the money is given to you to invest, but it comes with some hooks. Mm. And the hooks is that you use reliable technology, proven mining techniques and technologies and approaches. When you try and change that by using coarse oil flotation or dry stack tailings or deep eutectics, etc., all of a sudden the investors start to pull back going, hang on, you're adding risk to my project. And therefore they don't like it. And that's just the start. Then you've got the insurers who then look at the whole way you're engineering, and there's this reluctance to embrace new technology. And I think it's this ecosystem that we work in that's holding us back. There needs to be some joined up approach where we all work together. When I talk to a number of, I don't think Adam would mind me saying this, when I talk to Adam Matthews from the Church of England, who's led a lot of the transformation of the way pension funds approach the mining industry in a very proactive and positive way. He's talking about transition bonds and stuff like that. So how can we support, this direct answer to your question, how can we directly support mining industry practice to take a different approach, to take a risk, to try something new without the penalty of the less return on the investment. So it's shared, if you like. There's this proactive, collaborative approach to doing something different that's better.
And I guess with that collaboration, what it's doing is it's, I guess, reducing some of that risk to all of the parties involved. Instead of one person or one organisation having to take all of that risk, all that uncertainty in terms of a new technique either working or not by using these collaborative mechanisms, it means that actually everybody's in on it, everyone's got skin in the game, but also it means that projects that might not be able to go ahead can go ahead. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes, it is. I think we created a program in the British government called Mining, Metals and Environment Innovation in October 2019. And that was hosted by Chatham House. The actors I'm not allowed to reveal, but I can say about 61% of the world's market cap was in the room. So you can probably work it out who was there. And one of the things we identified with the supervision of Chatham House, we could protect the world's largest miners against accusations of corruption and price fixing and collusion. That was the first thing. The second thing we showed was that mining companies could collaborate on non-competitive subjects. The swim lane was very strictly defined on what you could say and what you couldn't. Chatham House were very aware of that and they held people to account. But the power of collaboration was demonstrated. The challenge is it was slower. So I think it's a combination of I don't know how to get the pace into it. I know how to get the collaboration, but I don't know how to get the pace, and we need the pace more than ever. The world is running out of time to get these resources, to find the resources and then get them out of the ground, whilst making sure that the environmental impacts are minimised as much as we can.
So in terms of that time question, there are lots of studies that are out there that talk about how long it takes to get from the geologist discovering a potential asset in the ground to going to opening it. And of course this varies, but on average it's about 17 years at least. So it takes a huge amount of time to be able to open that mine and then ramping it up. And as well, we don't just need to necessarily take one commodity out of that hole in the ground. If we're lucky, there might be byproducts, co-products that we can talk about as well. But in terms of the time aspect, so we've got this ticking clock that is climate change. We know that we've got big targets that we need to hit, otherwise we've got serious problems as a human race on this small rock that's flying through space. We've talked about the mining companies, we've talked about the investors and perhaps some of the lowering of the risk that they could be involved in. But what about governments? What should governments be doing? What should regulators be doing to help speed things up, yet ensure that we're mining in a responsible way rather than just a fast way? Right,
and I'm drawing on every bit of discipline I can on that question. The first thing I would say, and I have a lot of affection for the government, I served in it for 10 years, remarkable people. But what I would say is that they need to get experts in there. With the greatest respect, person that's done a degree in politics and economics is probably going to have a long time getting sufficient understanding in how the mining industry works. It's not as simple as people think. It's a very complicated industry to work in with a lot of issues that need to be addressed. So I would say that I think what we should do, more or less, is to allow the investors to take a greater role and governments to continue what they're doing. But I think what I would like to do is allow the investors to be much more interventionist. So they are the oxygen in which the mining industry works, right? They are the cash that enables mining to occur from an operational point of view, but also capital deployment. I think if the investors took much more of a, which they are, you see the CA 100 plus and the principles for responsible investment and so forth, really getting stuck in and putting standards in place. I think that's how the mining industry changes. I don't think, with as much affection for particularly the British and the Australian governments that I have, I don't think they have as much of a role to play as the investors do. I think the investors need to stand up and really start driving this. Just to finish with, what is your personal call to action? For me, it's about the investors. A real tight-knit, collaborative relationship with investors who are informed, clever, passionate about what their money goes into and the change it creates. I think there needs to be far more of a collaborative approach to that than has been in the past. I think they're a much more even relationship as well in the way we talk about money and what it's used for. And I think I think for me, that's after a lifetime of being in the industry and a decade of looking climate change in the face and what I can do personally about it, I think if I was to focus on that, I would ask the investors to work with the mining companies and the engineers to come up with better solutions. And that, for me, within Worley, Worley pay me a salary, which I'm very grateful of, but they enable me to conduct the mission, which is about using mining as a force for good.
Brilliant. Well, with that, thank you very much, Darryn. Thank you so much for coming in to see us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Much appreciated. Thanks.